Hello, everybody, and welcome to Bounceability, a 5-module resilience journey. And today is webinar 1, What is Resilience Really? And we will be going through what resilience is really about, what it is and what it isn't, about tackling some myths, and also talking about some of the initial aspects of what you can start doing to build your resilience at work. A little bit about me first. My name is Louisa Hogan, and I work with people in the workplace to be more resilient so that they deal with the pressure of their workplace changes a little bit better. I can tell you that that is a key skill in the workplace today, and it will be going into the future. So just by being here at this webinar, you are all already ahead of many people who have long careers. The, the webinar is a mix of information, some tips and some tools and exercises that you can do, including some homework that I'll give you just to try and to try some of the exercises at work so that you can build your resilience. I might mention books in this series. I might mention TED Talks or additional resources, and all of those will build a big toolkit for you to use to help build your resilience at work. So why is this important today at work, particularly in aged care? Well, as you all know, given that you all work in the aged care sector, the sector is under increasing pressure from the aging population, both from a consumer perspective as well as from the aging of its own workforce. There are fewer young people choosing aged care as a career option. There's an increasing shortfall in the workforce in the sector. There is a significant challenge is also the workforce in the workforce is that it's a critical component of improving outcomes for older Australians following the Royal Commission into Aged Care Quality and Safety. Um, but the fast pace of the work environment, the constant stress from outsiders, and the constant change is making it difficult to, one, attract a workforce, and two, stop that workforce from burning out or from leaving, which I'm sure you're all quite familiar with. So resilience is super important because resilient teams support each other, and as resilience increases, the environment becomes less stressful and less toxic for you to work in. High levels of staff turnover and difficulties in attracting staff due to low remuneration and limited career paths, and COVID-19 creating added pressures is making it even more difficult for all of you. So you can see that resilience is very important in making sure that teams are not burning out, because all of these challenges are creating a perfect storm of understaffing, stress, loads of change, limited professional development, um, and heavy workload, which is creating burnout. So a structured approach to all of you building your resilience can help address burnout and build workforce resilience. And something for you to keep in mind, you can have a team with 6 people in it, and if 5 of you are resilient and one of you is not, that one person's low resilience is going to bring the resilience of the whole team down. So that's why it's really important that all of you work together with your team to build that resilience and share those skills so that you can address that root cause of burnout, so that we keep people at work, we stop the toxic environment, and we build that resilience for you at work so that work becomes a more pleasant place to work. So let's begin our resilience journey with this beautiful piece of art that's on the screen at the moment. This is art from Japan, and it's called Kintsu Kuroi. And what it is the Japanese have this beautiful custom of when a pottery, a piece of pottery or a plate breaks, instead of throwing it away, they mend the pieces with gold and they glue it together. And the idea is that the broken piece becomes even more beautiful than it was before because it has mended with these layers of gold. And this is really an artistic way to look at resilience. And there's a lovely quote that says, "If your heart is broken, make art with the pieces." And that paints a beautiful picture about what resilience is. You can feel broken, you can feel like, that there's nothing left to be put together. But if you do, the result can be an even more beautiful and wholesome piece than before, and that you can be stronger and even better than you were before. And that's what resilience is about. It's about recovering from that and building yourself back stronger and better than you were before. Resilience isn't about enduring, and that's a misconception about resilience. People think that, you'll often hear people, I'm really resilient, I'm really tough, and they think that resilience is about enduring hardship, but it really isn't. It's about going through something difficult and bouncing back and bouncing forward with that. And I'll explain that a little bit more as we go on. So, resilience can really be defined as positive outcomes despite high risk, competence in the face of stress, dealing with change competently, responding to changing realities and responding to situations where the status quo is no longer sustainable. And you can think about a resilient story of somebody who is really resilient, and you can see that if you look at their story, you'll notice that every step of the way they weren't be able to maintain the status quo, and that change was needed to keep moving forward. And that's the same as what's happening now in the aged care environment. Change is happening rapidly. It's, especially over the last 5 years, there's been significant change, and you can't maintain the status quo anymore. So you really need to be able to adapt to that, and move forward and maintain resilience so that you can deal with that change competently. So, resilience versus recovery. So, when you bounce back, you recover from something. You you go through a hardship and you bounce back and you're at the normal place where you've always been at. Whereas resilience, I like to see it more as bouncing forward. You are strengthened by that event and you cope with it. And when a new event comes along another time that is equally as challenging, you are more prepared for it and deal with it a lot better. That's what resilience is really about. It's about coping with those changes and continuously being able to cope with those changes in a positive way, that you're coping with that and not just enduring it, that you're coping with it. You can look at resilience in a way like this tree growing on a really windy hill. If this tree grew straight and didn't adapt to the way the wind was buffering it, its branches would break every time the wind would blow, it would get damaged, and slowly that tree would wither away and probably not survive that environment. Whereas what this tree has decided to do is to bend in that situation and grow all of its healthy branches away from the wind so that when the wind blows, nothing is damaged. So resilience is really using challenges for growth to make future hardships more manageable, just like the tree on the slide. You can either bend or break in the wind. And that's what it's like at work. It's especially important for work because in the wind or in the high pressure environment, adapting to that and using resilience helps you increase your productivity, helps you maintain your engagement without your branches breaking off, without you withering away. Many people would ask, isn't that just adaptability? Isn't resilience just adaptability? I had a recent debate with somebody who I didn't know, but they told me that people don't need to be resilient, they need to be adaptable. And she described it as the story of the dodo, where the dodo was very resilient but didn't adapt and so it went extinct. And yes, I can see where she was going with that. If we don't adapt in today's world, we get left behind. But resilience means responding to change, surviving the difficulty, and coming back stronger, unscathed as a person or a leader. And a resilient person adapts, evolves, changes, and through that survives and doesn't collapse, but comes back to a state of being able to continue to perform. And I think where people get confused is that they think resilience is about standing firm and being strong, like the dodo, and they don't see that resilience actually is about adapting and being strong and coming back stronger. So it's really a shift in the way you think about resilience. Resilience really is the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, and even significant sources of stress. That is what resilience is about, and I want you to take that away with you today. It's about coming out of that and being prepared for new challenges as you move forward, bouncing forward. Take all of those notes with you about resilience. It's not about being strong and standing there and enduring all of this hardship, which many people have done through all of the reforms in the aged care sector. So it's about you adapting well in that hardship and in that environment and coming out even stronger than you have been. Here's an insight for you too that you can take away with you today. Resilience is ordinary, it is not extraordinary. So if you think I'm not a resilient person and I never will be, that's not true. It's not something you are born with. It's not something that some people are born with and others aren't. It really is an ordinary thing that you can learn and practice with daily and become much better at. It's not something that needs to be difficult for you. And that is why it's really important that you bring some um, awareness into how you are during difficult situations, particularly as we move through these difficult times in the aged care sector. So when you're going through some significant changes at work, when something bad is happening that's super stressful, we'll often ask ourselves unhelpful questions. And this could be, what if bad things happen again like they did last time and we were all so stressed? And what if that happens again? Why did this happen? Why me? Why is this happening to me? I don't have any luck. We ask backwards looking questions, and these always have unhelpful answers, and they start to make you feel even worse. They increase your anxiety, they make assumptions about what's going to happen, they make assumptions about what did happen, and you start to believe that the problem is an actual thing, and you start to also believe that you have anxiety. And when we start thinking that there can be changes that help people, we start to have resilient thinking. And it's really important that you start with, moving forward from today, is when you're going through something stressful at work, is to not ask unhelpful questions. Resilient people all share some similar characteristics too. They connect with people really well. They create specific practical goals that they can work on. They reframe their thinking to create new meaning. So their thinking is a little bit different. They connect with things that make them feel good and they anchor themselves to things that feel good. And they have big picture, long-term thinking and see challenge as a part of a larger picture. And you can see how you can do that in the aged care sector going through those changes, looking at the long-term thinking of the changes going on and how that challenge is part of a larger picture that could be for the better later on. So resilient people are social, they have a great attitude, they know their goals and values, they're emotionally intelligent, and a little extra thing is that they know how to be silly and to bring humor into their day. And we'll be covering a lot of these aspects as we move through bounceability and the 5 modules. Not all of them today, but we'll be covering some of those as we go on. So let's first look at this capacity versus challenge graph. And a lot of you would be familiar with this. So your capacity on one side, as your capacity increases and the challenge decreases, things are very easy. But as your capacity increases and your challenge increases, you're in that growth edge. So you've got enough capacity, but you also have enough challenge. So things feel good. They're not too challenging, and you feel like you're growing as a person. You're learning heaps of things. But when there's lots of challenge, but not enough capacity, and the capacity is down the bottom, you're over the edge or in this red zone. And practicing resilience can help make those red zones orange. So when you find yourself in that red zone, you can move into that orange zone just by practicing resilience techniques that I'm going to talk with you over this 5-part series. And a lot of you may be feeling over the edge at the moment. You might be feeling like you don't have any capacity to take on any more challenges, and you're just feeling, you know, like you just can't do any more. And that's the stress performance curve. This might be familiar to you too now in your work environment, where if there's too little stress or underload, you can be too laid back or inactive. Then you get that optimum stress. So stress is actually a good thing. It's not a completely negative thing. It's only too bad what's bad when you have too much stress. So when you've got that optimum stress level, there's good things happening. You're in that growth edge. But then you just get to the top of that hill where you get too much stress and you're overloaded. You get overload and you start to feel exhausted and tired. And every day you wake up and you just don't look forward to going to work. You feel so tired. You don't know how you're going to get through your day and you don't get through your task list and it's busy. And then that takes you down that hill where you get anxiety, panic, anger, burnout, and breakdown. And a lot of people in the aged care sector are in that burnout zone. I'd say majority are probably feeling in that exhaustion zone. And where we want to get everyone here in this webinar is back to that optimum stress zone before you get over that hill. So let's start with looking at your resilience. And resilience can be seen like you're traveling over the water uh, on a boat. Let's say you're sitting on a boat and things are nice and calm on that water. The water level is high and you're just cruising down a river. And things are calm. The sun is shining, there's enough water in there, and you're just floating along. So your resilience level is that water level. And sometimes until that water level drops and you start getting white water and you're crashing through um, rough times, you're hitting rocks, and your resilience level is really low. And what you can do, and people don't realize this, is that you can actually push your water level up. And it does go down too. So stressful situations push the water level down and make this whitewater rapids. And increasing your resilience level and practicing things that increase your resilience level pushes that water level up. So you're back on that cruisy river on a boat, rowing down the river on a sunny day. And I'll give you examples, what pushes my resilience levels up and what pushes my resilience levels down, where I feel like I can't cope with stress. Things that push my resilience levels down is not having time with my friends or family, not exercising, working too many hours in a row in a day, not going for walks, not spending time outdoors. But what pushes my resilience water level up is I'm a runner. I love going for long runs. So whenever I go for a run, my resilience levels increases because I feel ready for the day. Exercise, spending time with my friends and family, socializing, and also reading books really boost my resilience level. So for you, you need to ask yourself, what brings your resilience water level up? What are the things that pushes your level up and what are the things that you need to avoid to push your water levels down? And some of them you can't avoid, like long hours at work during a crisis or changes going on at work. You can't avoid those all the time. So they will push your water levels down, but you can balance that by pushing your water levels up by doing the things that really boost your resilience. So I want you just to use that as an exercise after today's webinar. Write down what pushes your resilience water level up, what helps you face the day, what helps you decrease some of that stress and pressure so that you're not hitting the rocks on the river and trying to get through your day on a whitewater rapid ride, and rather just cruising down, rowing your boat peacefully. And there's a thought experience and experiment, an invitation for you after these webinars is for the duration of these webinars, every time you encounter a situation you find difficult or frustrating or challenging or annoying, see this as part of your training. See this as part of these webinars for you to practice some of these skills and apply the tools and techniques that I talk with you about over the series of these webinars. So the first one you can do is start thinking about how you can raise your water levels and applying those during frustrating, challenging, or annoying times so that you can boost your resilience. We are social creatures as humans and part of this superorganism of human society. And social connection is one of the most important components of resilience because it's protective against mental illness, it's protective against burnout, and biologically, isolation is toxic to the human nervous system. We are not meant to operate in a bubble away from everyone else. It's really good for us. An insight for you today is that social connection releases oxytocin, and oxytocin dampens the stress response by inhibiting the amygdala, and the amygdala is a ancient part of your brain that causes fight, or stress, or freeze. And oxytocin dampens that, takes away that feeling of fight, flight, or freeze. And you would all be familiar with that. Many of us are in that fight, flight, or freeze every day as we go through the changes that we go through at work. Going through that burnout, your brain is your amygdala is constantly putting you in that stress. Um, and oxytocin really is the moral molecule. It's essential in providing and receiving social support. Without it, we wouldn't have social support and be social creatures. And there's an idea that I can't on my own, but we can. That's really what resilience is about. If you think about being in the trenches with somebody, when you are going through something difficult and you have a friend who's there with you by your side going through that difficult thing, or a partner or a family member, how much less alone do you feel, and how much more able are you to face that stress or challenge because somebody is there next to you facing that challenge? And so connecting with the people at work going through that challenge and having those strong social connections can really boost your resilience. And that is why, as a team, if you are in a team or if you're a team leader, you need to be making sure that your social connections are strong and that you are not having politics or gossip or those sorts of things impacting the culture of your team, that's impacting the social connection. Because when that team is going through those challenges, they need to feel connected to go through that much better. Also, things that help with this is helping others. When we help others, our brain is rewarded with dopamine. And there's something called the Harlow monkey experiments, and it's quite distressing, the Harlow monkey experiments. You can look it up, but be prepared. Some of it can be really distressing to read. And one of the things that they did in these Harlow monkey experiments was that they raised monkeys without their mother, and they gave them a false mother to be raised with. And some of them didn't even have a false mother with fur or anything on her. They just had like a little cage. And obviously, those monkeys that had no mother grew up with severe mental health issues. But one of the things they found was the only thing that helped those monkeys recover, or recover as much as they could, was giving them another monkey to care for. And the minute they cared for another monkey, they became much more well adjusted and much more normal. And dopamine also fights that amygdala response and reduces cortisol levels and stress. And you can do that by helping people and being there for others, build that social connection. Think of social connection as well as your support structures. So you are a bridge, and stressful situations, criticism, overload, setbacks, change, all of the changes in the aged care sector are really adding a load to your bridge. And support structures are the things that hold you up, and the foundations are other resilience techniques that you can also use. So support structures are very important for you as a bridge in a world of stress and change. When there's an imbalance between demand and resources, so the demand on you and the resources available, like other team members or any resources that you would need at work, what helps is support. All right. And it's nice when it's there, but when it's not, strengthening it is a skill. You need to build support into your day and make sure, if you're a team leader or you're in a team, how do you support one another so that you can have a balance between demand and resources and build your resilience as a team. So this is a tool I'm going to teach you that you can take away with you from today. It's called Network Support Mapping. And it comes from somebody named Chris Johnson. He's excellent in the resilience area. He's written a few books in this space, and he created mapping your support network, or network support mapping. And what you do is you write your name in a center of a piece of paper, and around your name you write down all the people you feel supported by, and you draw an arrow from each name to yours. The more support you get from them, the thicker the arrow. And then you write down the names of people you play an active role in supporting, and you have an arrow that goes from you to them. And the thicker the arrow, the more support that you give to them. And then you will put a circle around people who are your believing mirrors. These are the people who have reflect a positive belief in you. They believe in you, they support you, and um, they they just pump you up every day, and they truly believe in your abilities and your way and your and how you do things. And then what you do is when you've mapped that all out, you'd look your network as a whole. How do you feel? Are there people that are really good at supporting you, but you don't support back? Are there people that you support a lot, but they don't give you any support? Are there people that are not believing mirrors and that you provide support to, and you just get nothing out of that relationship or friendship or relationship? And when you start to do that, you start to notice the people that you maybe shouldn't spend so much time on and start looking at the people that you should build your support network with. You should actively um, speak to those people, connect with them, and stay connected with them rather than um, putting your time in people that don't give back. And sometimes there are people that you have to give to that you have no choice and that you can't avoid, like family members that may do that. But as a whole, there are some friends that you can let go of, or some people that you need to let go of, and others to grow the support with. And this is mine. So, mine, I've got a friend, Michelle, we equally support each other. My sister is my believing mirror. She supports me massively, but I only give her a little bit of support. And then I've got a friend, Lisa, who I give loads of support to, but she only gives me a little bit. And so if I looked at this, I'd go, okay, I maybe need to spend less time with Lisa and put more effort into building that connection with my sister so that she continues to be a believing mirror, so that I could be a believing mirror for her. And we build that intense connection that will only build my resilience through tough times. And keep Michelle. Michelle is a good friend of mine, and that relationship works really well, and I can continue that relationship as is. And remember that people are in the boat with you. So if you have a toxic person who doesn't support you, they can really rock the boat and make that boat ride really difficult, and you'll be hitting rocks and you'll be arguing, and it won't be a pleasant journey in that boat. So remember, make that boat ride smooth and calm by lifting your resilience levels and not having people in that boat with you that rock the boat or make it too heavy that hits rocks along the way. And you need to ask, are there ways I can strengthen the positive support aspects in my environment? And this is your work environment. So yes, personally, you need to build your resilience by creating those connections. But let's go back to work, especially in the aged care sector. How can you strengthen those positive support aspects in your environment, in your team? What are things that you can do to support each other, not get upset at each other? Cultivate a culture where it's supporting and a context that builds resilience rather than depletes that water level for you as a team. Remember, as a team, you are all in that boat together. So you need to make sure that you support each other so that the boat isn't being rocked and you're not dropping that water level as a team so that you're struggling to go through those changes. And cultivating a favorable environment begins with appreciating what's already there and working well. So acknowledge those things that work well and build on them. You have a circle of control. So for you immediately, what can you do to build your resilience that affects the people around you? So you've got the circle of visible influence. When you build your resilience and you become more supporting, that has a visible influence around you, and that extends outwards. There's invisible influence because the way you influence people around you, they go on to influence people around them. And you've got to remember, you might only be able to do one small thing in your day, but that small change can have a big impact in the way that it influences everyone around you. And conversely, being negative and bringing the water level down of your team is going to have that influence of people around you and further in that circle of invisible influence and how it impacts the greater team or the greater sector, even eventually as a whole. People leaving the workplaces stressed or burnt out and going on to new workplaces because of the way people are dealing with their anxiety, with their stress, and not having good resilience levels. So, questions that you can ask at work. What do you feel part of or connected with at work? Are there things that you do as a team that helps you feel connected and supported? What do you draw strength from at work with each other? And where do you take refuge? And if the answers to these are difficult or negative, then you need to start working on that with your team or talk to your team leader. If you are the team leader, you need to start answering these questions on how you can make this better for people, because those are the roots of resilience. A spiritual, deeper support um, is linked with resilience. And the deeper that support is, the more that tree can grow and take on that wind. So if you think you're using that tree example from earlier, deeper roots means that tree is able to grow and be strong even if the wind is hitting it every single day. So you need to answer these questions for yourself at work and start answering how you can make some of those changes. Another thing that you can do is start identifying inspiring examples. So think of an example of a resilient person. So based on the definitions I've given you today, think of an example of a resilient person and think about something that they were resilient, that they showed demonstrated resilience while they were going through it. So if you know somebody at work who demonstrated real resilience in the definitions I've given you today, going through that challenge, think about what they went through. And one of the key things you'll notice is it may seem really bleak at the start what they were going through, but in every story there's a turning point. And that turning point is where they start to get better and improve and come out of it. And so think about your story. If you're going through, or think about the story of an inspiring example. What was the turning point in that inspiring example? What was the turning point for them? And when you identify that turning point, you can see that every story has that turning point. And then if you want to take that further and think about the challenge that you're going through, what could be a turning point for you? Or has there already been a turning point? That's a really handy exercise to do in terms of resilience. So we're coming to the end of our first webinar, and I'd like you to practice at work for the following week some of these things. So first thing, do the support network mapping. Start looking at what your support network looks like. You can do one for yourself personally and one for yourself with your connections at work. Start looking at how you can strengthen those connections. What do you need to change or develop to change relationships, and what you need to develop relationships? So you need to look at that. Cultivate a favorable environment by, we were talking about how your environment and your context shapes resilience for your team. So how can you cultivate personally a favorable environment that starts influencing your immediate visible circle of control and then the invisible circle of control after that? I want you to think about what you're grateful to and for what. So think about the things that you're grateful for and write some of those down. Gratitude is a huge part of resilience, and when you feel grateful, you feel like uh, the challenge is not so big. And that's a fact. There's lots of research in positive psychology around gratitude and how people who express gratitude daily are much more resilient than those who do not, and especially going through challenges. Also, practice reciprocity. So, nourish what nourishes you. If somebody nourishes you through, being friendly, do the same back. And make sure that you are using those things to lift your water level. So nourish what nourishes you. Raise that water level this week. Reflect on rootedness. So what do you draw strength from? Think of that tree being rooted in the ground. What do you draw strength from? How can you build those roots stronger? How can you increase that water level? And then have a conversation with somebody with the aim of finding out something new about them. Start building new connections at work. How can you do that as a team? As a team leader, how can you encourage your team to do this? And my final tips, quick ones for the end of this webinar. Do something nice for somebody daily. When you see someone almost every day, it can be easy to get caught in the motions of familiar conversation. So make an effort to learn something new about them, do something nice to them, buy them a cup of coffee, surprise them with a cup of coffee. And then hug people you care about. It's not always easy at work, it's not always appropriate, but a hug is one of the most natural ways to release oxytocin. If you remember, oxytocin fights that amygdala, reduces cortisol levels. So make sure, even at the end of the day, that give somebody you care about a big, deep, and meaningful hug to increase that social connection and also just give you that oxytocin hit to help you deal with the stress of the day. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed today's webinar. I so look forward to being with you on webinar number 2, and we'll start looking at attitudes and how attitudes helps you with your resilience at work. Um, and I will see you at the next time. So good luck with that homework, and I look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Take care. Bye.